Hey everyone, Jim here, and in this intro video, I'm going to show you how to set up a local VM with a LAMP stack and OWASP Juice Shop. So this is going to be the first in a series of videos. I'm going to walk you through some common web security testing techniques. This is going to be used primarily for a class I'm teaching at an institution, but if you're just following along from YouTube, that's also totally okay. So I'll be setting up a LAMP server, which stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. This is a very common software stack used to host web applications. And then we'll also be using OWASP Juice Shop, which is by the Open Web Application Security Project. And Juice Shop is an intentionally vulnerable application that you can use to test and learn about web security. So it should be a lot of fun. So I'll be using this virtual machine for a lot of activities in my class and other future videos, so feel free to follow along. So to get this up and running, I'm going to be using VMware Workstation. You can use whatever virtualization product you are comfortable with. I'll be doing VMware Workstation. It's kind of my favorite product to use. VMware Player is also totally fine to use, as is VirtualBox. If you're running ESXi or Proxmox or whatever else, that's fine. Now I'm going to be doing this using an Ubuntu Server VM. If you want to use something else, that's up to you, and that's okay. You're going to be kind of on your own depending on the distribution and how you choose to set it up, but I'll be using Ubuntu Server. So step number one is to have your virtualization product installed. I already have that up. That's VMware Workstation for me. And then step two is going to be to download your Linux distribution that you can use to set up as your server. I'm going to use Ubuntu Server. I already have that downloaded. If you don't have Ubuntu Server downloaded yet, if you search for Ubuntu download, you can go to ubuntu.com/download or Google around for it, and you're going to want to use Ubuntu Server. Ubuntu Server and desktop are similar. The server doesn't have a GUI or a graphical user interface. It's just a command line, versus the desktop does have that actual desktop environment. There's some quality of life features, but we're just going to be using this to host some apps. We don't actually have to use it for a desktop, so we're going to go with a server. I'd recommend downloading the LTS version, which is right up here. And I already have this actually downloaded on my system already. So when you download this, it'll be an ISO file. This is essentially a virtual CD or DVD. Back in the day when computers had CD-ROM drives, you could actually burn this to a CD or DVD, put it into a system, and install an OS. Nowadays, this is typically used just as kind of a package to either format format and deploy the operating system via like a USB drive, or in the case of my class in this video, to set up a local virtual machine. So I already have Ubuntu Server downloaded, so you want to make sure you have that downloaded first, and you have your virtualization software. Okay, so once you have those two things, we can go ahead and get a VM or virtual machine up and running. To do that, you can just go in VMware, just file a new virtual machine. Again, if you're using VirtualBox or another product, you have to kind of figure that part out on your own. We'll go ahead and I'm going to say typical. I'm going to select my Ubuntu DVD or ISO file, and I already have that selected right here. And again, you would browse for that and wherever you have it on your local system. It can be under downloads or documents. I have a folder named ISOs that I keep my ISO files in, so I'm all good with that. I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to go ahead and just name this Juice. It's going to be hosting my OWASP Juice Shop and some other things, so might as well just name it Juice. Or actually, no, I'll name it LAMP Juice. I'll do that instead. LAMP Juice. That sounds like fun. In there, just making sure my name updated with the file path. And be mindful where you save this. Virtual machines do consume a fair amount of space. It's better if it's on a solid state drive. It's going to run a lot faster, but you want to make sure you have enough storage. This VM in particular, I think I'll set up with around 20 gigabytes of storage, which is going to be more than enough. So go ahead, we'll leave that the default of 20. We can split it into multiple files. And then from here, I'm going to customize my installation. So I would recommend, depending on your host computer, bumping up the amount of memory and processors. My host computer here has 64 gigabytes of memory, so I'm going to bump this up to 16. That's probably a little bit overkill. If you leave it set to 4 or 8 gigabytes, it's probably going to be more than enough. But I have some extra resources, so I'm going to leave it set to 16. Same with processors. 2 would probably be fine. 2 processor cores. I like to have a little bit extra oomph, so I'll go ahead and set that to 4 because I have a nice processor that has multiple cores. And then I'll leave the rest of this alone. NAT is fine for this purpose. I'll just leave it as NAT. Okay, and after this point, I'll go ahead and click close and click finish. And I'll start up my VM. So this is going to bring up the Ubuntu Server installer. If you haven't installed Linux before, it can be a little bit intimidating, especially if you're going with a server operating system without the nice graphical installer. But it's still not too bad. So I'm going to say try or install Ubuntu. And if you noticed your mouse has gone on your system, you can use Control and Alt with VMware to escape the console and bring that back to your host computer. So this is going to load the installer. The speed at which this runs is going to be entirely dependent on the speed of your host system. So again, I have a faster computer than I'm doing this on. So this will be a relatively quick process. If you're doing this on an older device or on a slower device, expect this to take longer. It could take maybe even up to an hour or so to install a VM if you have an old, slow system. So loading the installer, I think we're probably getting pretty close to the point where we can continue on. Yep, so now it's going to ask us what language do we want. English is good for me. It's going to ask us if we want to update the installer, and I'll say sure. By using the arrow keys on my keyboard, I'll navigate to update the new installer. It's going to then connect to the internet and download installation updates, which is nice. And again, this will take a second or so. And say, great, we have a US English keyboard. Yes, we want to install Ubuntu Server, which is that little X you see selected currently. It's going to assign an IP address via DHCP. In my case, it's the 192.168.75.135. Now, this address is very likely going to be different for you. So just make sure you take note of this address. And I'll show you how you can find this IP address later on. That'll be an important part of accessing your LAMP environment and Juice Shop because you'll need to know that address. And because this is set to DHCP, just keep in mind that that address may change. So if you boot up this VM later on and you can't connect to your server, just double check the IP address. It might have just changed. DHCP might have pulled another IP address, and you can just use whatever the new address is. It shouldn't necessarily break anything, at least the way I'm going to run the class. Using a dynamic address should be okay. We don't need a proxy address, so click Done. Don't need a mirror address, click Done. We can use the entire hard disk, so tab over and go down to Done. This will automatically partition the disk in a default manner, which is totally fine for this. Okay, it's just going to have us kind of confirm our file system summary. That looks great, so Done. And it's going to say, do you want to continue? Because at this point, it's going to partition our virtual hard disk, and anything we do at this point now is going to be, anything that was on here is going to be erased. But this is a new VM that I had just set up right now, so it's an empty hard disk. So I have no concerns with saying continue. We're going to type in my name. I'm going to type in a server's name. I'll call it Lamp Juice. And for username, I'll just do Jim. And I'll select a password of my choosing. I am going to install OpenSSH Server. To select this, you can hit the spacebar on your keyboard, and that'll turn the X on and off. So I will install OpenSSH Server, and I'll tab over to Done and hit Enter. I don't need any of these other optional things right now, so I'll just tab over to Done and hit Enter. It's going to now essentially confirm that our configuration is good, and I believe it's actually going to start to install. Yeah, it says installing system. And again, this process will take a few minutes to complete. So it's running. Yeah, so, okay, there it goes. Some more stuff popping up on the console here. So at this point, I think I'll just pause the video so we don't have to watch a command line run for a few minutes here. Otherwise, it'd be me just talking and kind of in circles. So I'm going to pause the video. When it gets to the next screen, or the next time I have to click a button or enter a button, I'll be sure to resume the video and let you know. All right, so I let this sit for maybe like 6 or 7 minutes and the installation finished. As you can see now, it says reboot now. One other thing that happened during this process is you could actually cancel it, updated the OS, you could cancel that and reboot it right away. I let that finish. It only took about 6 or 7 minutes on my system. So I clicked into the VM, and now I can just tab over to reboot now. hit enter, and the system's going to restart. And when this restarts, it's going to bring us back into our console interface. At this point, once we get back in, I'm just going to sign in and confirm that the IP address is what it was before and that it hasn't changed. And then from now and here on out, essentially, I'll be using my SSH client to administer this device. I'm going to be using PuTTY, but I could also use PowerShell or really any SSH client of my choice. Lately, I've been using, at least on Windows, WSL, and then using Ubuntu, and that has a bunch of other cool Linux tools built into it. So it's really up to you, whatever SSH client that you want to use. This is failed on mounting CD-ROM drive. I think it'll still restart. Let's see if I hit the enter key a few times. Yeah, and then there it goes. And starting up Ubuntu Server should be a relatively quick process. I would imagine within the next 30 seconds or so, we'll be at our terminal screen. And just about there. And there we are. So I'm going to sign in with my user account and just check my IP address using IP space -A. And we have our IP address listed right here. It's the 192.168 number. So from here, I'm going to open up PuTTY, and I'm going to connect to the 192.168.75.135. I'm sure I will accept the key. Go ahead and log in with my user Jim and my password. And at this point, we could either start using Juice Shop or we could start setting up our LAMP server. I'd say let's go ahead and we can set up our LAMP server first. Before I do anything though, I just want to do a sudo apt update and just make sure that our system is actually updated. It probably is. Yeah, so supposedly, okay, so some packages can be upgraded. So I'm going to go ahead now and just run sudo apt upgrade the packages. Yes, go ahead and upgrade them. This will take probably a minute or so. 30% done, 40% done. Yeah. And then after this, we'll go ahead and we'll actually start installing our LAMP stack. So there's a nice tutorial out there from DigitalOcean that we can visit. It's from 2020, but it still works out pretty well. Sure, I'll accept the cookies. So first we'll install Apache. So go ahead and copy that in our clipboard. And of course, we're not going to run that until after this upgrade finish processes. 80% done now. 90% done. And we're close. The last 1% always takes longer than you'd expect. Let's wait for it to finish. All right, and it's fine. We can just tab over and click OK. All right, so now that is all set, if you were to run the command a second time, hopefully it'll tell us, yeah, there's nothing to be upgraded because we just ran the command, which is good. So let's go ahead and we'll install Apache using sudo apt install Apache 2. Yep, we'll install Apache. And that'll just take another minute or so. And we'll just go proceed for now, click OK. And OK, Apache's updated. So you can run this command if you want, just to see the options available. And as you can see, we're on Apache, Apache Full, Apache Secure, OpenSSH. I'm just going to leave that be as is for now. Jeez, all these pop-ups. And at this point, if you were to navigate to the IP address of your server, which in our case is this 192 address, Ta-da! Apache 2 is working on Ubuntu, which is a good sign. So next, we're going to install MySQL. So sudo apt install MySQL will be the command that we run. Again, this will just take a minute or so. And as an FYI, as we're going through and installing this, just be mindful that these are installing these applications with the default configuration. So you're definitely going to want to do some hardening. We'll cover that kind of later on. But out of the box, again, default configurations, which may introduce some security vulnerabilities into your LAMP environment. So just tab over and OK. We don't need to restart anything at the second. And then next we'll install PHP. So sudo apt install PHP, libapache 2, mod PHP, and PHP MySQL. This is going to be the command you want to run. This command will essentially not only install PHP, but configure it to work both with Apache and MySQL, the other two services that we had just installed. And again, LAMP stands for Linux, which is our operating system, A for Apache, M for MySQL, and then P for PHP. So after this, hypothetically, our environment should be a LAMP stack, and we'll do like a test PHP info page or something similar, just to confirm that. But go ahead and we'll install PHP. And like most things, this will just take a minute or so. Okay, and we're good. So at this point, our server is running Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. We have a LAMP stack up and running. And we can test this out by going into var www. And from here, let's go into HTML. And I'm going to make just a test PHP page. I'll use nano, and I'll just do nano test.php. And whoops, it's not going to work. Actually, do sudo nano test.php. So this is a protected directory. And I'll go ahead and I'll just do a test PHP file. So this right here is going to run a PHP script that runs PHP info, which is a built-in PHP function to display system information. So Control X and then yes to save that, enter to save the file. And from here, if I navigate to our IP address /test.php, you'll notice now it's going to give us a nice output of our environment. It tells us we're running Ubuntu, it tells us we're running PHP. There's information about Apache and our MySQL configuration. This is going to be a really useful page. Again, you probably don't want to leave this sitting out in a public directory forever. This is something that a bad actor or threat actor might potentially want to have access to. So this is for your own eyes only. And then when you're done, you can remove this or not. It's up to you, right? This is a test environment, so you can leave it here if you want. But again, in the real world, you'd want to probably just nix this file from any production environment. Okay, so LAMP is now up and running. So step number 2 is to configure Juice Shop. So Juice Shop is a Node.js application. So there's going to be a couple things we want to install. There's a nice tutorial I found for that. I'll include it again in the link in the comments or link in the description down below. But yeah, so essentially what we want to first do is download Juice Shop. So to do that, we can go ahead to the Juice Shop GitHub page. I'm not going to go directly to that page because I know there's a newer version out there, 14.3.1. I'm just looking to see. I feel like there's a newer version of Juice Shop. Let me just Google for Juice Shop shop download. It's in here somewhere. Download. All right. On the left-hand side here, it does say releases or sources, so we can go ahead. And sure, we'll go over here, and we can download under releases. 14.3.1 is the latest version. And I'll do for Node.js 18. So I'll go ahead and select the Linux version, copy link address, and then from here I'll just do a wget, paste it in there. Actually, I don't even need to have this in our www.html directly. I'm just going to put this actually straight into my home directory. I'm going to do wget and download it straight in here. So because Juice Shop is a Node.js application, it's not going to actually use the LAMP stack in the traditional way. And we have our TGZ file, and we can extract this next. And then we're going to use a tar zxvf to extract the file into a directory. And this should happen pretty quick. There is a lot of files in here. So you can go into Juice Shop, and now here is our package. So next we need to install Node.js and npm. So you want to make sure we download the version of Node.js for the version of Juice Shop we had also downloaded. So by default here, you can see this guide is going to tell us to download version 14. That is not going to work. We want version 18. So we can go ahead to the repository, and we'll go with version 18. And we're going to download the Linux version. So Linux x64. And let me just check to see what this guide recommends that we do. It wants us to use the XZ version. Sure, we can do that instead. So we'll do the XZ. 18 to tar.xz. Make sure we grab the Linux version actually. So right here, copy link address. Now what we can do is we can just actually back out one directory and do a wget and download that file. Again, pretty small. And then we're going to extract it with sudo tar xvf. And we'll give it a second. And here we are. And we can go into the node folder. And we want to copy this essentially over to these various directories here. So never mind, I'm going to back out. We don't need to be in the node folder. And we're going to do sudo cp-r, which is recursive. And we are going to copy it to these directories. So we want to go in here, make sure we have the folder name. And we're node 18.12.1. And again, your version may be different, so hit enter. And this will take a second or so to run, which is perfect. Now if I do a node -- version, you'll see that Node.js version 18 is now installed. And I can check out npm version. And that'll say npm version 8.19, which is fine. And now we can actually start OWASP Juice Shop. Before we do this, I want to go into the Juice Shop folder. And the way I'm going to run this class is I'm going to run this in CTF mode. So this is going to give you different flags for all the various Juice Shop challenges that you complete. Now to do this, I'm going to go into Nano and do the config.yml file. Or what's the name of that file? It's in the config folder. And it's called default.yml, not config.yml, default.yml. So it's within the config directory. And from here, I want to go down near the bottom. I'll just search for CTF. And I know it's near the bottom. I'll just go down to the bottom. Okay, and here it is under CTF. This is like essentially near the bottom of default.yml. It says show flag notification. Right now it is set to false. I'm going to set this to true if you are actually taking a class with me at an institution. Set this to true as well. You're going to want to see those flags when you complete challenges. Great. So now I'm going to Control X and say yes, save. And from here, I can say npm. I'll do sudo npm start. And it should start Juice Shop on port 3000. Give it a minute or two to complete. Okay, it does say server listening in port 3000, so it just took me a second to see that. But it now should be up and running. And again, you want to keep this dialog box just up, and now from here we can go to our, I don't even have the tab open anymore, but I can do it again, 192.168.75.135 port 3000. And hypothetically, here we go. So we now have OWASP Juice Shop up and running. Isn't that exciting? So that's it for now. I'm going to pause or stop this video rather. So feel free to tune into the next video where I go through kind of the first set of easy Juice Shop challenges. So congratulations if you made it this far. You have a working lamp stack. Although, again, it's the default configuration, so just be mindful of that. And you have OWASP Juice Shop up and running in the background, which is a good thing. It'll be a lot of fun going through a lot of these challenges in class. So that's for now, and tune in to the next video.